I'm Brittany Hawkins, the co-founder of ELANZA Wellness. And today we are going to be talking to Mike Tamayo, a leadership and executive coach. Thanks so much for joining us today, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
At ELANZA, we always talk about how much fertility influences almost every other aspect of our lives and why this is especially true for our career. And Mike is especially tuned into the why in our lives and how that can help everything from family planning to relationships and your career. So maybe, Mike, I'll just start off by asking you, I know you had this thriving career as an engineer. So what got you into coaching?
Well, I built a pretty extensive career in tech as an engineer, as a leader of engineers for almost 3 decades. And you can say it was successful by several measures, but in the end, it wasn't as fulfilling as I hoped it would be. So in my own work with a coach, it was a process of having reflected back to me what I am saying about what I really care about and what I should be doing. And that process helped me realize that this is it. Like what I am doing now is what I was telling the world through my actions. That I should do. And so I went through the same process that I now help my clients do, which is discover that and then to align their whole lives with those values.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm sure a lot of people, what we're interested in is your background as an engineer and how that applies to even the way that you do your coaching. So I'm sure some of that will be revealed.
Yeah. And briefly, I don't want to pretend that people are like computers, but there are concepts that are used in building technology that are applicable here. There's art and science being the things that you get from books and school, and there's art is how do you apply that science in a specific situation? And the marriage of those things, it brings together what's possible with what is necessary, and then we iterate to fine tune the results. And that's true in both software engineering and in building your best life.
Yeah. So what's the most influential aspect of coaching, and how does it influence everything from your career to your family planning?
I think something that's really key here is that coaching doesn't view a person as a set of problems to be solved. It's a whole person that has a set of values and desires, and they're unique to each person. And we want to have it all. And society tells us what having it all means. But really, you need to figure out what that means for you. And there's a process that you can follow to figure out what having it all means for you. So as I work with clients, I might ask you, for example, tell me about a time when you were at your best. And not necessarily what were you doing, but who were you being? How were you being? And as we do this, we start to distill the values that are most important to you, and having it all means living your life in alignment with those values and not what someone else is telling you should be doing. And so what we do with those is we bring all those into your life, and then we track. We actually use some metrics. I have you tell me, how well are you honoring this value right now? And then in a month we check again, and it's almost like you can get a dashboard of the progress of your values in your life over time.
So once you have these expectations of yourself, and once you have those recalibrated, walk me through the tools that you often provide people to get to their whole life best life.
So what we usually do is we start with what's called a discovery session. And before that, I will give the client a questionnaire, and it's pretty involved. It might take an hour or two of reflection for someone to think of the answers to the questions. And the questions, only one of them is about your goals. And that is the big agenda that you're setting for the work that we're doing together. But along the way, I ask questions that surface things about, I might ask you about secret passions, or what are you avoiding or tolerating, that kind of thing. And I start to distill the things that I sense are really important to you. And then I reflect them back to you, and then we kind of make a plan to figure out how to bring them in. So to use you as an example, I had you answer some of these questions. And as I read them, I was writing down, like, here are some things that are popping up that seem important to you. And so, for example, here are some words I wrote down. I wrote down health, adventure, impact, learning and growth, freedom and flexibility, and community and family. So as I say those, are they resonating with you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Pretty spot on.
I asked you the question in the questionnaire about what things are you avoiding in your life, or procrastinating, and you said building a family, and that made me curious. As I looked at that list of values that I pulled out, and I kind of zeroed in on freedom and flexibility. So I'm curious, what does that value have? How could that be related to your procrastination on building a family?
Ooh, getting deep. Yeah, no. Yeah, I think you uncovered, for me, the idea of having a family means that I would have to lose a lot of that freedom and flexibility, and maybe that sense of adventure is somewhat dissipated. So yeah, I think that definitely contributes to procrastination.
Right. Yeah, I totally get that. So what we would do next, there would be a process by which I would ask you a lot of questions like this to tie things that are kind of under the surface to things that are actually happening, and then we would sort of have you evaluate, how well are you honoring these values that are important to you, and then we find ways for you to bring those into your life in ways that you can have them in balance. So how, for example, in this case, how could you continue experiencing and living the value of freedom and flexibility while also building a family, and then, how do you continue having adventure, and how do you continue learning and growing in the context of building a family? And then we experiment. Like, we might do something that seems like it's not even the thing that you signed up for when you hired a coach, but it starts to create space and open up and give you the confidence that, yeah, I can have it all in my own way. It's not what I thought. It's not what society told me having it all meant. It's my version of having it all.
Yeah, I think I love this idea. And I think what you were saying before about having those expectations is key. So I think, you've talked about what sort of information will be revealed, but what are some other tools that you found to be particularly impactful in helping people achieve this?
So there's a couple of major areas come up here when you ask that question. One is what I call saboteurs. They're limiting beliefs, and we all have them. These are things that they're parts of ourselves when they get in the way of us accomplishing what we want to accomplish. And it's important to identify those and accept them and not have them identify us, and to work with them. So to make it more concrete, I'll give you an example. I have a strong perfectionist, and it's important that I say I have rather than I am, right? Because it's not my identity. It's just a part of me, and it's part of all of us. It just happens to be strong in me. I name it, right? His name is Sheldon, and Sheldon keeps me from finishing things because they're not perfect. And so what I do with Sheldon as I work with him, I think, well, what is he trying to do? He's trying to protect me from something. He's trying to protect me from failure, from embarrassment, from judgment, whatever it is. He really doesn't want to hurt me. He just wants me to be the best version of myself. The way he goes about that is counterproductive. It makes me stuck. So I will, when I'm feeling stuck, I'll say to Sheldon, look, let's get this to 80% perfect, and let's put it out there. And then we'll come back and we'll make it perfect. I promise. And what happens is we do it. We get something 80%, we put it out there, and the world doesn't end. No one dies. It's fine. The feedback comes in. It's positive. And that creates that. So Sheldon says, oh, that wasn't so bad. Let's go on to the next thing. Let's make the next perfect thing. That one was fine. And there are all kinds of dimensions to our personality that work that way. They're really trying to protect us, and they limit us in ways. And so we identify those. And there's an assessment I do to find those and to figure out where they came from, what they tell you. And you start to realize, oh yeah, when I tell myself that's this, it's not really me. It's not really me. And it's pretty freeing when you realize you can just live with these things. It's like when you're at work and you have colleagues that are difficult, and you can't fire your peers, right? But you can figure out a strategy to work with them and get whatever it is that you want to get done. The other area is we call allies. So we don't often see what we're capable of, and often what makes us capable is that we have other dimensions of ourselves that are good in different contexts. And in order to see them, what we do is we create something that's a little more tangible. So we create allies, and allies could be a person, an actual person, a fictional person, a symbol. It could be a tree if that's meaningful for you. It could be a celebrity. It could be an author, and we talk about what is it that you appreciate about this ally of yours. And usually what happens is it aligns with something that we've already determined is important to you. But what you're doing is you're sort of playing this game where you're kind of letting them speak for you. So you're stuck about a decision you want to make about something that's important to you. And I might ask you, well, what would so-and-so have to say about this? And for some people, that's it. Like that question alone, it just breaks something open. In other cases, we have to play with that a little bit, and some people are really into their bodies. They want to embody what they're feeling. So I'll say, like, show me how this person sits or stands. What do they look like when they're here in the room? And then they do something, and I'll say, okay, now, what would this person have to say about this choice that you have to make? And we might bring in various different allies in different situations. Of coordinating all of these allies. In the middle, there's your inner wisdom. You might have heard it called maybe the kind of the inner leader, and that's the one when we're at our best. It's there. And sometimes we have to go back a little bit and think about when that thing went so well, like what was going on there, and it usually wasn't that you just worked hard. It was that you were being some way that came from inside, and you kind of forgot about it. And so we want to go back and relive what it is that you mustered from within yourself to create that result. And then we give that a name or a symbol. And again, some people are creative, and so we might actually have them create pictures or write something and have it there on their desk, so that when they're in a situation where they need inspiration, they will go to that thing for inspiration. And it's it sounds like a game, but there's research that backs this up, that when you can take stock of everything that you have by using whatever mechanisms or symbols are available to you to help you really own all the kind of your special powers.
So how would you describe, what is a successful coaching experience for you? How can you, what sort of transformations have you seen, and what impact has that had on people's lives, and specifically potentially in the both career but also in the family planning side of things?
Right. What I see pretty much without exception is that a client shows up and they say, my goal is this. I want a new job, a new career. I want to be a better partner. I want to start a family. And as we dig into that, we find, that the reason they want that is because of this, and this. And we tend to pin all of our hopes on one thing. And that doesn't mean it's not important, but it means it's not the only thing, right? And so what we do is, as we start to bring in these other, like when I was talking about the, all the values and how do we honor them, they're looking at this goal that feels daunting, and it's like it's the one thing they have to do, and they're just paralyzed by it. And what I find without exception is that when we start playing around with the things that are just under the surface, like in your case, we were talking about freedom and flexibility. There is this transformation that happens slowly. Like, this is not an overnight thing, but over time, people start to realize, oh, I can get this big goal really meant a whole bunch of things. And now I'm finding those things, and then I can have them in balance with the big one. And when they go back and they look at the big goal, it doesn't seem as daunting anymore. Like, oh yeah, I'm capable of being kind of the architect of my life. I was doing a bunch of things because I should do them, or I was told I could do them. I feel like I have to, and now I'm doing them in my own authentic way, and they feel empowered to tackle the big things. And often there's such a sense of momentum that we nail the big thing, and it's like, well, now what? It's like the bar goes up, and then the question of what's next has answers already, because the process of kind of building your life made you want more, and that's not a bad thing. It's not about doing more, it's about being more. So you bring more fullness into your life as you discover what's really important to you. And so you're not, again, like I said, you're not pinning all your hopes on the one thing. You achieve it, and it's great, and in achieving it, you did all these other things that made your life more full and makes you hungrier to make it even more full.
I think there's a lot of crossover there with family planning and what you expect. I'd love to actually, you really touched on this idea of expectations, and we expect to have a certain outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you can kind of explain how you dismantle some of those, and whether, how that's impacted people.
Right. Well, a lot of what society tells us is based on, sometimes it's based on thinking that is outdated. So for example, I said the phrase having it all. It's a phrase that was coined in a book in the 80s. And that was a perspective at one point of time of one person or one group of people. And because it was written and it was published and it was prominent, we hold that up there as that's the way it is. And it's really useful to look at that. Does that really ring true for me? If I do that, what that person said, what will I have? What will my life be like? And often, and I know I've experienced this, I think about that and I think, no, that's not it. It's kind of like I built my career. I went to school and I started a discipline, and I read all the books, and I read all the blog posts, and I learned the things I was supposed to learn, and I knew how to do it, and I was good at it. And still, I felt like I was doing what was expected of me as opposed to what I really wanted to do. So it's almost like being selfish, but not really. The right word is authentic. It's, let's take these things that I know are out there, and there's science and there's opinion, and like, let's just synthesize these into something that is really me. And that's what tends to break things open for the people that do this work.
Yeah, and social media doesn't help setting expectations for your life.
That's right, because what we show on social media is sort of, it's the ideal, it's the person that we think people want us to be, right? Like, wouldn't it be great if you could just say, hey, I'm this messy thing, but man, this is awesome.
I love that. So if there were just a few questions that you would want people to start thinking about, as it pertains to any aspect of their life, what would they be?
Um, there's some things that have been kind of impactful for me to consider as a starting point. And we've sort of touched on them, but I'll reiterate them for kind of for focus, for impact. What are you doing? Ask yourself, what are you doing because you feel like you should be doing it, because it's expected of you, rather than because you want to do it. Another question that tends to be productive is, what if you wanted to do, but you haven't given yourself permission to do it? And then we get into the why of that. Why haven't you given yourself permission? And then finally, what are you tolerating? And when you get the answer to that question, ask again, what are you really tolerating? When you sit quietly for a minute, what is it that shows up that you're like, oh, I wish that wasn't like that. And then the answers to those questions aren't solutions, but they provide inspiration for you to start the process of designing your best life.
Or engineering it in your.
All right.
Oh my,
Yes.
that was so helpful. And I just want to, for the audience members, if you guys have questions, Mike is going to be in the ELANZA community. And we'll also have a link to his website below. He has kindly offered to give 2 complimentary coaching sessions to the first 10 people that sign up, and you just need the code ELANZA. So I'm excited. I think that there's a lot of, this is just the beginning of some really, really helpful conversations you can have with people. So really appreciate your time, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks again for having me.